that exercise shouldn't be something that we get motivated for. It shouldn't be someone's hobby. Exercise should just be routine, just like brushing our teeth. That's how important it is. You know, no one says, I don't feel motivated to brush my teeth this week, so I'm going to stop. They just do it. Now, that's how exercise should be.
Hello, and welcome to the D8 Training Podcast. I'm Anne-Marie Antic, your host. I'm here today at the D8 Training headquarters with Senior Physiotherapist Alex Obradovic from Motion Theory Physio. My whole family, including my 2 kids, Chloe and Jake, all go to Motion Theory Physio. Alex is personally my trusted physiotherapist and has helped me immensely, especially with my shoulder. And he serves many of our clients at D8 Training. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
Yeah. I can't wait to pick your brain about the importance of physio and strength training. I've got my pen and paper ready to take plenty of notes. This is going to be good with all your knowledge and expertise.
I'm excited.
Well, let's start. Could you share with us your journey about becoming a physiotherapist and how long you've been in the field for?
A bit about myself. I started as a personal trainer, actually way back when I was in high school. Worked as a personal trainer for about 2 years. Loved it. I actually worked from Good Life Gym for roughly 2 years. Found it was fun, great, and I really enjoyed helping people. But I found when they were injured, I didn't know what to do. I could tweak things, I could tell them to stop doing certain exercises, but I really wanted to understand why they were injured, and I wanted to know how I could keep them doing the things they wanted to do. The name of the game was to keep them exercising. So I suppose I thought the next logical step is let's learn how to treat injury. So decided to go to uni, study physio, continued working as a personal trainer while I was at uni. So I got to implement a lot of my anatomical knowledge, biomechanical knowledge, injury prevention knowledge. So it really helped as a personal trainer learning and studying at the same time. And I could see and trial things from my studies while I was working as a personal trainer.
What difference did you notice as you're studying and implementing it with your client?
I understood why I was getting people to do certain exercises and certain movements. So for example, if someone was having pain doing a squat a certain way, I understood why they were having pain, for example, in their knees when their knees went over their toes, or if their back was hurting doing a deadlift, how I could change the position of the bar or the position of their hips. So just basic biomechanics really helped. And it just allowed me to have a great understanding of, like I said, the why behind the exercise, not just let's burn calories or let's get fit.
What sort of results did you find that they were getting as you're making these tweaks and changes?
The biggest thing I found as a personal trainer was client retention. So when people get injured, they typically, would last a few weeks with that injury, and then they'd slowly taper off, and I'd find they'd stop training, because if you're sore, you don't want to train. The biggest thing I noticed was people were staying with me for longer. I am still a personal trainer, and I've still got clients back from 10 years ago when I started that still train with me today.
Oh, wow.
And when I started as a personal trainer way back when I was 18, the average client might have lasted 6 months, if that, and I would have been happy. So I guess the biggest change was client retention. Secondly, it was achieving goals. If they came to me wanting to lose weight, they lost weight. If they wanted to get stronger, they got stronger. But I think all of that came down to the fact that they were able to consistently stay in the gym. I'm not saying, stay injury-free the whole time, but at least when they did have little niggles or injuries, we knew how to train around them.
So I assume at some point you transitioned from personal trainer to full-time physio?
Yes, so when I finished uni in 2020, I believe, or 2019, I did pause on the personal training and just focus on physiotherapy. But then I found I missed that part of the industry, so I decided to go back at a part-time. In amongst all of that, while I was studying, I also became a Pilates instructor as well. I was doing Pilates instructing, personal training, and physiotherapy all at once. So.
Oh wow, that would keep you busy.
Yeah.
Why and when would someone go to see a physio?
The most simple answer would be if you're sore and you've been sore I generally tell my patients, if you've been sore for more than 4 weeks with the same injury, you should go see someone about that. It's obviously not getting better on its own.
When you say sore, what do you mean? Like there's DOMS when you've got like the delayed
Sure.
muscle soreness, and then there's other soreness.
Yeah. most people, at least people that exercise, they'll understand what DOMS feels like. DOMS feels quite muscular. When I say sore, I'm describing more of a sharp type presentation of pain. It doesn't have to be sharp. It can be a dull type of pain, but it definitely feels different to muscular DOMS. So if you're sore in an area that you haven't exercised recently, that tells you straight away that it's not DOMS. So for example, if you trained legs 2 weeks ago, but you've still got this sharp knee pain or this sharp or aching knee, that's not DOMS. That's something else, and that's when I'd be considering getting it looked at.
And why would we come to a physio as opposed to another health practitioner, such as a chiro, masseuse?
There isn't any one answer. I'm a physio, so I'm going to be biased, but as a physio, we take quite a holistic approach. So we actually follow what we call the biopsychosocial model. Basically, that encompasses the biology, so that's bio, the psycho, which is the psychology, and the social, which is the social aspect. So humans are complex, and therefore we can't just look at humans as a piece of meat, i.e. just biology, or we can't just look at them as a brain, psychology. We need to sort of think about everything holistically. So we as physios are taught to look at a person as a whole in that or under that model, which looks at it holistically. So that means if you come and see a physio, you're getting, I guess, like a more of a well-rounded approach. We're looking at everything from how is your injury affecting your social life, or how is your injury affecting your mental health. We all know that if we're not exercising, mental health can be affected. So we're taking those things into consideration. And then we obviously look at the biology as well, like how are you physically being affected. But why would you pick a physio versus a chiro or a masseuse? I suppose people might not know this, but physios are trained in pretty much all of those things. So we do massage, we do adjusting, spinal adjusting and neck adjusting. So that's what you'd get from a chiropractor. I should mention some chiros do massage as well. So it's not that they just do adjusting. But then we also do a rehabilitation plan following our hands-on treatment. So you're going to get, like I said, a well-rounded service. Whereas if you say just go to a masseuse, they're not going to prescribe you exercises for rehabilitation. They're not going to be able to diagnose you either. So a big part of what we do is diagnosing your injury. What is actually going on? Giving you some hands-on treatment, and then giving you a plan when you leave the door.
What is a rehabilitation plan? What does that involve?
It all starts with the assessment. So you come in and we'll assess you, gain information from you about your injury and how it's occurred, and then we'll do an objective assessment or a physical assessment where we'll do specific tests and movements to try and decipher what's actually going on. And so in some cases it's quite simple, in some cases it's not, but we're trained in and we're actually qualified in diagnosing you. So once we've got that diagnosis, then we know where the rehabilitation needs to go. So what is rehabilitation? It's really just understanding you're here now with your diagnoses. Where do you want to be? Now for you, that might be, I want to be back in the gym doing bench press, but I've got a shoulder rotator cuff tear. And so the rehabilitation plan will lead you toward that goal. The diagnosis will guide that. If it's a muscular issue, the rehabilitation will be different versus a nerve issue or versus a joint issue.
So you look at what the client wants as well, their timeframes, their goals, and then work towards that.
Yeah, I guess the big thing is their goals. Their timeframes might not fit with the reality. I mean, if they can fit with the reality, that's fantastic. But really, the goal is the key. That gives us the end point, and then we are at the starting point, and then we just have to fill in the middle. And that's my job to sort of describe to the patient the path to get there. And it's not always linear. There might be little U-turns and ups and downs, or there typically is, particularly with longer chronic injuries. But rehabilitation is all about putting the knowledge and power in the patient's hands so they understand what I have, what's my injury, what do I need to do with my injury to get to where I want to be. And then we give that information.
And then it's up to the patient to make sure that they do it.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if anyone tells you they can fix, a chronic issue or even an acute issue with their hands, they're lying to you. And we can help with symptoms, for example, if the symptoms are pain or inflammation or stiffness, tightness. But ultimately, the ball is in the patient's court. We give them the tools, and then they have to use those tools and do them consistently to get to where they want to be.
You mentioned mental health, and that's quite a big topic at the moment. And I didn't realize that physios did anything there. What do you do with the mental health aspect?
I've got to be careful in saying that we do anything specifically, because obviously that's more of a field for psychologists. But I suppose when I describe the biopsychosocial model, it's more about understanding how certain psychological aspects or things within people's lives will affect their mental health. And we just have to have an understanding that injuries don't just affect people's muscles or their bodies, but they affect or have a domino effect on other aspects of their life. So for example, we're trained and good at understanding how an injury, for example, that puts someone out of the gym, which is something they love doing, is going to affect their state of mental health, whether that's they may become slightly anxious or they might become depressed. And so we need to understand or pick up when that might be happening. And if we do pick up on that, understand where we can refer to, for example, to psychologists. Yeah, you'd be surprised at how often this does happen. And so it's about having awareness on when to pick up that mental health issues are at play, and then when we can refer onwards. But no, we don't have a specific role in, I suppose, treating the mental health side of things. It's more about identifying and then refer on.
Okay, so you're able to see it and then also help them get to the right person.
Exactly, because some people don't realise that there can be help for that aspect. So, and we have psychologists and GPs that we are affiliated with that we can refer to and that we know can be quite beneficial.
Well, I remember when I came to see you one of the first times, and I guess I was guilty of trying to do my own hamstring rehab, which I got completely wrong because I was stretching my torn hamstring, which is apparently a no-no. And I remember our first appointment when you asked me what took you so long to come in. I think I came in 2 months after I had actually done the injury. And I loved how blunt you were, and I knew from that moment we were going to work together for a long time. But why is it important to come see the physio when the injury occurs as opposed to waiting like I did?
We as physios describe injuries as having a natural course or a natural history. What we mean by that is a lot of conditions can get better on their own. And so, like I said earlier, generally, if something is hurting, for example, a hamstring tear in your case, if that's not getting better within 3 to 4 weeks, that should straight away be a bit of a alarm bell moment to say, okay, it hasn't fit that natural healing that we would expect if it was something small. And so right away with that type of timeline, you should be thinking, I should go and see someone. So I'd say generally, like I say, if something's hurting for longer than 4 weeks, you should get it looked at because it's not healing on its own. You're probably doing something, like in your case, stretching, that keeps aggravating the injury and preventing it from healing. It depends on the person, right? Like some people are very in tune with their body and they know, okay, I've injured myself. This doesn't feel like a normal DOMS, like you described, delayed onset of muscle soreness. So they go and see someone right away. I might have someone injure themselves today and come tomorrow. They won't wait 4 weeks to see if it gets better on their own. Typically that patient has seen a physio throughout their life and they've understood it's better to get things looked at earlier. But if you've never seen a physio, if you've been lucky enough to never have injuries, it might be a little bit more difficult to then know, okay, when should I go? But if I were to give a general answer, it would be if it doesn't feel like DOMS, so it doesn't feel like pain that you would get after exercise, and if it's lasting longer than say 3 weeks, that's a general rule, I think, or a good guide to come and see someone. Now, of course, if something's happened in a sporting event or you've had a traumatic incident, like you've fallen over, or you've heard something crack, or if you've had a muscle tear, people will hear a pop. Or if you've had a knee injury at sport and you felt a pop, go right away. They're the sort of that you'll know. If that happens to you, you'll know. If something feels unstable, if you're walking and you feel like your knee's going to collapse underneath, go get looked at. I mean, generally it's safer to be going earlier than waiting, because weeks do matter. That even days can count in terms of, if this is going to be a good rehabilitation or it might be the difference between a successful rehab if you get it onto it early, or one that potentially might need surgery if you don't get onto it early enough.
Because then I get with my second injury, so the shoulder, and I remember it's probably been like that for over 10 years. Like I remember doing yoga and the warrior pose and my arms would be out and it would be sore. So I kept thinking that I wasn't strong enough and I was just weak and I had to build it up. But as I got stronger and kept building it up, then it started hurting more. And like I said, I thought it was just me as opposed to injury. And that's when I came to see you and you said, no, that's what was it that I had?
Tendinopathy.
Tendinopathy, and now I'm going through quite a long rehab
Yeah.
to strengthen it up. It sounds like it just if unsure, something's not feeling right, go see the physio.
Yeah, I think so. I think back even 5-10 years ago, physio wasn't as commonly used. It wasn't as much of like an essential service or something that people had within their weekly or bi-weekly routines. And these days, thankfully, with private health insurance and the rebates that people can get, I guess it's more practical and financially a little bit easier for people to see someone. So if you have the opportunity to go and see someone, and if you've got private health insurance, use that. A lot of people don't use their physio on their private health insurance and their extras. So these days, I would say, yeah, it's easier than ever to go and get it looked at. And it's better to get things looked at earlier because in your case, your shoulder became a chronic issue, meaning it lasted far beyond 3 months in duration. And what we know from the research on most injuries is that if they last longer than 3 months, they become chronic. And then the physiology or the anatomy of your injury actually changes after the 3-month mark. And basically the body goes, well, the injury didn't get better. Let me just sort of forget about that. Let me just leave it as it is. And the body essentially stops trying to heal itself, at least as much as it would have in the early stages. And it just makes it a lot harder for someone like yourself to get better quickly. And that's why the process has been so long for you now because you waited 10 years.
Definitely. And the other interesting bit was it actually got worse before it got better because it was like my body was resisting from trying to fix it because it'd been like that for so many years.
Yeah, and then that fits sort of into that chronic nature of the injury like I described, because the body's essentially decided that the injury now is how it's going to be. And then you suddenly change your routine or you start rehabilitating it. And it's a bit of a shock to the body. So you are going to get a little bit of, I guess, resistance from the body to go, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you trying to irritate me? I've settled, leave me alone. That's what you've experienced. But you've sort of come through the other end of it now where you realize, okay, just got to push through that little bit of irritation and continue on with the rehab.
And what about kids? When's a good time to bring kids in, or when should you bring kids in?
Kids are an interesting one. I'm seeing more and more, children these days than in 5 years ago. With children, firstly, they're quite robust. So children can exercise, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And you think, how are they not getting injured? This is ridiculous. If I go for 2 runs in a week, I feel sore, So firstly, kids heal far quicker than adults do. And so they can take a lot more exercise load without getting injured. It is a case-by-case basis, So if you know that your kid isn't one to complain about pain, and then suddenly they are, coming to you and say, "Hey, I'm sore," and they're saying it day after day after day, definitely listen and go get it checked out. I've had many parents that didn't listen to their children, and the children were telling their parents, "Hey, I'm sore," and the parents like, "Oh, you'll be fine," and they're actually like a broken bone.
Oh wow!
And the kid was just, getting away with somehow running on a broken leg. That's how robust they really are. That'd be the first point. If your kid's suddenly saying I'm sore and that's out of the norm for them, listen to them and go take them to get checked out by physio. It's even a good idea to just get a kid to be looked at by physio, even if they're not injured or sore, because we can add a lot of value to a child discussing with them and their parent about their current load, and if we think their current load is actually going to be excessive moving forward. So just because they're not necessarily sore or injured now, we could foreshadow or foresee injuries occurring if a kid comes to us and says, "Look, I'm doing X, Y, and Z," and we're like, "Wow, that is too much." And just because you're okay now doesn't mean you'll be okay in the next year or so. It might pay if you do have a bit of a concern, hey, is my kid doing the right amount of load here? Is it too much exercise? Is it not enough? Just even going and having that conversation.
I know with Jake, I brought him in and it ended up just being growing pains. Did a couple of sessions and that, as you mentioned before, physios do that, massaging it through, just relieved a bit of tension for him. Sure. And then we were able to implement it at home as well. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, children are growing so quickly and often they can get what we call growth plate related injuries. This is where the part of the bone where growth occurs from becomes inflamed due to muscles which attach over the growth plate becoming too tight. So an example would be heel pain in kids, where their calves and Achilles become too tight and they start pulling on the growth plate in their heel. Simply getting onto that early and doing things like stretching or foam rolling of the calves or massage of the calves can take the tension off the muscle, off the calf, therefore off the Achilles, and therefore the growth plate doesn't become inflamed and the child can continue to grow without getting pain during that process.
Right, so it just sounds like it's just good to bring kids in for an overall check, and then you can help prevent future injuries or tactics to help the growing phase.
I think so. And again, it is a case by case, but if your kid is doing a lot of exercise, I guess more than the average kid, I think it does pay to get another opinion on if they're doing the right amount of load. And again, if they are reporting pain, get them checked out. Don't just think, they're making it up, particularly if that's not within their typical nature.
Oh, I remember my parents. Oh, I feel sore. You'll be right. Typical European families. Just walk it off. And it's like, but I can't walk, Dad.
That's right. And so I have a similar experience when I was playing soccer. I was about 12 or 13. I started having a growth spurt. And so suddenly I had this excruciating heel pain. Felt like knives were stabbing up my feet and it was horrible. And my parents basically were like, well, you can rest or you can keep playing. They didn't understand, that physio was even a thing because like I said, 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't as commonly used. And I just stopped playing. And now, fast forward to present day, knowing what I know that I had a simple growth plate injury, which could have been treated quite easily with some modifications to my footwear, with some stretching, and I could have continued playing sport, which unfortunately I just stopped. And so in my case, my parents did listen to me, unlike yours, but they, I suppose, didn't give me the best route to dealing with it. I think we're in a good space now. Like in today's generation, people are looking after themselves more than ever, I believe, at least those that do exercise, and they're getting seen to far more than what they would have done, a decade ago.
Could have been a soccer superstar. Never know.
I know. It's probably a good thing I stopped, otherwise I would have shown up Nevin.
Yeah. Probably. I guess it's a good segue, the exercise in the gym. I'm a big believer of the gym, and I can tell that you work out and go to the gym as well. Why is weight training, specifically in the gym, important?
Weight training is one of the most important. I suppose there's only really two things that people should be focusing on when it comes to exercise. It's weight training and cardiovascular exercise. They're the two. We've got ample amounts of research that prove that we should be doing cardiovascular exercise, obviously for our heart. Similarly, we should be doing weight training for our musculoskeletal system, so our muscles, bones, joints, ligaments, and tendons. For example, females, there's research that's come out recently that looked at if you're a young woman between the age of 15 and 25, I believe, if you do weight training in that period, between 15 and 25, your risk of osteoporosis when you're postmenopausal is something like 50% less. As a woman, unfortunately, women are far more prone to getting osteoporosis, which is thinning of the bones, essentially, weakening of the bones, which can lead to fractures from falls, etc. That's quite valuable, right? If you can strengthen yourself up in those early years, you can see that there's this effect that lasts decades later on and prevents these chronic illnesses into our later stages of our life. So that's something that's relevant to yourself, but similarly for men, same story. Why should we do weight training? It keeps us strong. It keeps us functional, meaning that we can continue to do the things that we need to do throughout our lives. And, as we do age, we can remain independent, which keeps us out of nursing homes for longer, which is a good thing. While we are young, it also means that we can do more things with our kids and we can just live a more pain-free lifestyle.
Sounds like it should almost be like brushing your teeth.
Yeah, I think so. And that's a good point. I actually use that analogy with a lot of my patients. I say to people that exercise shouldn't be something that we get motivated for. It shouldn't be someone's hobby. Exercise should just be routine, just like brushing our teeth. That's how important it is. No one says, I don't feel motivated to brush my teeth this week, so I'm going to stop. They just do it. Now, that's how exercise should be. We have the research that tells us it's beneficial. It should just be routine. There shouldn't be any question around it. That's my opinion, and I'm sure you agree.
Oh, I'm definitely with you. I've been doing it for so long now. What is it? 15, 20 years, maybe longer. If I miss a session, if I'm away, unwell, kids, life, I feel like I'm missing something. Like I can't wait to get back into the gym and just exercise because it's become a way of life for me.
Absolutely. And if you think about how we evolved, back way back when we were, let's say cavemen, if you believe in that theory, but we were constantly on the move. We were constantly, walking, so cardiovascularly exercising, running, and we were also building, lifting, climbing, and we were using our musculoskeletal system. So we've evolved to use our bodies. We have not evolved to sit in offices for 8 hours a day and then sit in cars for 2 hours a day and then sit on couches for the remainder of the day. So you're actually going to feel less pain throughout your life. You're going to feel mentally far healthier if you just abide by the lifestyle aspects that we evolved from. Because unfortunately, modern society has changed and moved far, far away from what our physical, biological anatomy has evolved for. So there's this mismatch right now. And this is why you don't feel good when you miss your exercise, because your body's yearning for it.
You have a look now, they call it the box analogy. You know, we come home into our box, we drive our car, which is a box, we sit in front of a box and TV, you know, watch it. Whereas previously we did go out and hunt and you know, walk and do so much more. But the other bit that I know with the gym is after I work in an office as well, so 8 hours a day at a computer. When I go into the gym, the weights don't talk back to me. I'll go there, and if I'm frustrated or angry, I can take it out, and it's a good way to express any emotion that I have. So then when I am with my kids and husband, I'm a lot more present and happier to be around them as opposed to sitting in front of the TV.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, time and time again, you know, my personal training clients will come to me and they're grumpy about something that happened in the day, or their husband's, you know, annoyed them or whatever it might be. And then 45 minutes later, once the session's done, they're leaving in a completely different demeanor. You know, they're smiling, or they don't look like they want to punch me in the face. You know what I mean? Because they have, you know, they've done their exercise and they've actually gotten all these neurochemical changes within their brain, which make us feel better. And ironically, the things that we want to do, like sitting down and watching TV or on our phones, do the opposite. They deplete us of those neurochemical changes that we're yearning for to feel good, such as dopamine release. So the irony is, the thing that you don't want to do the most, which might be exercise, is the thing that's going to make you feel the best when it's done. And like Nevin says, you know, you never regret a workout that you've done.
I know one common thing that people come in and say, you know, at the gym is, I've got an injury, I can't move, I'm scared if I exercise it, I'll aggravate it more. What are common injuries gym goers can experience, and how can they be prevented?
I'd say the most common injuries, again, this is quite a broad question, but the most common injuries would be related to either poor technique. That's going to traditionally happen in your more complex movements. That would relate to things like poor technique with squatting, deadlifting, bench press. So they're quite complex compound movements. There's a lot that can go wrong. And so if people don't have the right technique, I find commonly it's one of those three that someone's going to tell me I got injured on, believe it or not. You know, there's thousands of exercises, but they're the three. And that might be because they're the three that are often done the most as well, right? Everyone wants to squat, deadlift, or bench press. So that's number one, I'd say, technique related injuries. Despite what people say, there is a right and wrong technique, but within the right category of how to do a correct exercise correctly, there are variations which can be allowed. So Nevin, for example, promotes the knee over toe, and that fits if it's done in the right way for the right person. But for example, if you're squatting and your back is bent at 90 degrees, you know, that's not correct. There is room or a spectrum of what is right, but there's definitely an absolute of what is wrong. But I'd say the other aspect of how people get injured in the gym is their load. So load management is a big issue for a lot of people. Now, when I say load, I want to be clear in saying that load is describing the total amount of something. And typically for people, it's either too much weight, so load is too high a weight, or more commonly, it's too many exercise sessions within too little a time. For example, you get motivated, it's New Year, New Year's resolution, and suddenly that person that for the past 10 years hasn't run is trying to run every day. It's not that running's bad, it's just that the load, the amount they're doing is just far too high. Commonly, people that get injured, they don't have the right amount of load, or they don't ease their load, or they don't program their load suitably, and they get injured during that process of getting back into exercise.
And how important do you think a trainer is when you're starting out in the gym or even continuing on?
I am biased, obviously I am a trainer. I believe it should be, you know, legislation that everyone gets or has to have a personal trainer for their first ever time in the gym or lifting weights. People have died in gyms, you know, and it's more common than you realize. Young kids have died in gyms, adults have sadly passed away exercising. from things that were easily prevented. And what I mean by that is if they were taught the right technique and just simple principles of exercise, understanding load, for example, understanding technique, and so I think everyone, if they're inexperienced in the gym, should have at least one session with a trainer. I think that should be promoted by gyms. So if you walk into a Good Life or an Anytime Fitness, when you sign up, it shouldn't be, do you want a personal trainer? It should be, you get a personal trainer for at least one session. They can just show you how to use equipment safely, because gyms are used incorrectly quite unsafe places. We are lifting weights, sometimes over our heads or above our heads or on top of our spines. And so if we don't do that suitably and safely, it can be catastrophic. I've had patients from one bad deadlift, they've honestly ruined their lives. They've had to have spinal surgeries, and that's just been catastrophic for the trajectory of their life. Short answer, I think everyone should, at least for their first couple of sessions, if they're new to a gym, have a trainer. And then in addition to that, I believe having a trainer ongoing is really beneficial. It just depends on your goals. You can never know enough. There's always something someone can teach you. So if you've got the ability to have a trainer, I think it's really beneficial.
That's one thing we promote definitely in D8 is technique, making sure it's that we're all correct. And someone like myself that's been doing gym 15, 20 years, I'm still getting pulled up on the form. Sometimes it's laziness, but
Sure.
To get it fixed up properly. But kids, we've got the junior gym program, so ages 10 plus, and kids just want to go heavy in the weight. They really need someone to go, no, not yet, and making sure that their body's straight. And even if they've been coming for that 6 months plus, they still revert back to their old habit.
Even myself, I'm a physiotherapist, I'm a personal trainer. I still benefit from having trainers or other trainers that I train with. Just last week, I was in the gym with another, he's a physio student, but he's a personal trainer, and he was giving me tips I didn't even realize I was doing incorrectly. He's saying, you're not holding the bar evenly on your left compared to your right hand, or you're moving the bar far too quickly on the way down with your bench press. I understand the anatomy inside and out, the physio, the biomechanics, everything, but I'm still getting little things wrong. So you can never know too much. And I think if you think that, you're probably a little bit, you're overconfident. So it's a great point with kids. Absolutely, they're still growing. And so it's even more important that we don't stunt their growth of silly injuries that are prevented, or lifting too heavy when that's not necessarily required at that age.
Yeah, ego-based. Sometimes I just want to go up.
If they're boys, ego.
I don't know if girls are any better. I know I'm like, I can go up the next weight, and Nevin will be like, no, not yet. One more week, a couple more weeks of, bench pressing that one weight.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
What about flexibility and mobility training for overall fitness and injury prevention? How important is that?
Very important. I suppose, you can't just do the weights because things will stiffen. Let's put it this way. If you've got an injury, the way I approach an injury is first, let's improve, let's say it's a knee, the mobility of the leg. And then once we've got the suitable or appropriate amount of mobility or flexibility, then I progress into strengthening. So I see mobility and flexibility as like the precursor. You need to earn the right to do strength training. So time and time again, I see people doing, for example, a shoulder press, but they can't, without weight, by the way, they can't even lift their arm over their head far enough to complete the movement correctly. In that instance, I'll tell that patient, look, let's improve the mobility of your upper spine. Let's improve the flexibility of your lats and pecs. And then once we've got enough range of movement with the shoulder and flexibility of the shoulder, then we start doing shoulder press. So it's like they're intertwined. There should be an element of flexibility and mobility into everyone's routine, whether that's at the end of every session, stretching the areas that you've worked, or if that's a dedicated hour once a week or twice a week at home, stretching on a mat for 20, 30 minutes, or yoga in a class. There's awesome resources on YouTube, for example, at home yoga. There's really a lot out there that you can do.
And what are signs if you're overtraining, and how can that be addressed to prevent injury and burnout?
The first sign of overtraining is you're just always injured, constantly coming to me with the same injury or frequent injuries elsewhere, but essentially never getting to a point where you're injury free. That'd be the biggest sign of overtraining. Someone that's constantly flaring up either the same injury or coming in with new injuries every week. not to get too technical, but there are certain conditions within the body, for example, our tendons, which you have an issue with your shoulder tendon. 24 hours after exercising, your injury becoming far sorer than it would have been if you hadn't exercised. And we're not talking DOMS, but we're talking injury pain.
Yeah.
If that injury pain 24 hours later is worse than normal, that's a sign of overtraining or doing too much.
I've got pages of notes that I've written down. Well, I didn't actually realize how much physios did in terms of, putting the plan together, assessing, helping clients reach their goals. So that was a really good learning for me. And then just even the importance of the weight training and making sure the technique's right, the load management.
Definitely. And I think, I work at Motion Theory Physio here in Goodwood. So I think we're quite unique in the sense that we're hands-on therapists. We do a lot of hands-on within the session, but we're very big on when you leave our consultation room, you've got a plan, you've got homework. We're not big on, people just coming in every week or twice a week just to get passive hands-on treatment. The way I see it is you earn the hands-on treatment if you're doing the rehab. And if you're not, then we're not on the same page and we'll have that discussion. The discussions vary depending on what the injury is, but the big thing that we as physios try to be excelling at is diagnosing people early with the injuries and then devising a plan from there. Because without a diagnosis, you don't know what you're dealing with, and then how do you make that plan? The name of the game for us is keeping our clients in the gym or whatever it is that they like doing, whichever type of exercise, keeping them doing that whilst managing their injury. We very rarely tell people to stop doing your exercise.
And I like how every time I'll come in or when needed, you'll change the exercises and they'll progress and get harder and harder.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it won't necessarily be every time, but it will be if you've made the suitable amounts of progress, and I can tell that the exercises that you're doing are not challenging you enough, we'll implement the principle of progressive overload, which all personal trainers should be aware of, and physios, which is, the body needs some new stimuli if it is to continue changing. And if we don't change anything, then nothing changes, right? And so you just stagnate. So time and time again, I see patients coming in, they've been to another physio or another 2-3 physios, and they're like, the program's been the same for 6 months.
Yeah. And
they're not getting better. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. Give it that change, that stimuli.
I think you guys at Motion Theory Physio are fantastic. Like I said, we all go there. Many of our clients, everyone raves about how great you are. Now, I know that you've got an offer for D8 members. Can we extend the offer to anyone that listens to the show?
Of course. So all D8 members and podcast listeners, if you call us up at Motion Theory Physio or walk in, just mention that you're a member or that you've listened to the podcast, and we'll offer a gap-free initial appointment. So if you've got private health insurance, it'll be just a swipe of your card, but there won't be any cost on top of that. And if you don't have private health insurance, we'll offer 50% off of our initial fee.
50% off?
Yeah.
Sounds a great deal. So if they want to come see you, how can they get in contact with you?
Go online, Motion Theory Physio, just Google us, and you can actually book online through our online booking portal. You can also call up reception and make an appointment, or you can walk in. We have an Instagram page as well. So if you want to check us out on there and see what we do, we've got some good reels and photos. And there's links on there to our website.
So the Instagram, it's at Motion Theory?
Yes.
Great. Nice and easy. Thanks, Alex, for your time together. I feel like it's flown by and I probably could have asked you so much more.
It's been great.
Yeah, I've learned a lot, and I'm going to be a lot more conscious and mindful in the gym and make sure I do my exercises so my shoulder can get better. But before I go, 2 final questions to finish.
Sure.
First one. What is one habit that someone can start today to make a positive impact on their training and vitality?
Don't wait to get motivated to exercise. Just begin exercising, and the motivation will come from that. So time and time again, people are waiting for that motivation to build up. But I think the moment you just do one session, whether it's a run or a walk or a gym session, you will instantly feel motivated, and that'll just build and snowball. Do the one session that you're potentially feeling a barrier up against, just do it. And I think that'll make a huge impact to your motivation.
I know sometimes the hardest bit, and a lot of clients say too, is just walking through the gym door. Once you start exercising,
absolutely,
it's easy.
Yeah.
And I'd probably add to that, after listening to you, go see a physio, even for a random checkup.
I think so. I think, just because you might not be sore today, we can do an assessment, like I said, and potentially, discover, identify areas that may lead to injuries in the future. We do a lot of strength assessments using some pretty fancy devices that can actually show us imbalances between your left and right. And so there might not be injuries yet, but they're things that could potentially lead to injuries. So if you're questioning if you should come see us, I think so. Just come and say hi, and you might get some value. Well, you definitely get some value out of it.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. And lastly, what does dominate mean to you?
Dominate means attacking all aspects of life, just going at things, trying not to overthink things, just put one footstep in front of the other, and just do the things that you want to do.
I like that. Thank you again, Alex, and thank you everyone for listening. Did you get value? Do you know someone else that would benefit from hearing what was shared today? Please subscribe, like, and share our show. Your support will help us grow and continue to bring such valuable content to you and others. If there is someone or a professional you would like me to bring in, reach out via our socials at D8 Training. Until next time, dominate your life.